I remember the first time I saw something die. A squealing hare, limbs twitching, eyes wide, ripped apart by whippets in the village green of Norfolk. I was only a 6-year-old boy. I couldn't scream. I couldn't move. Couldn't do anything to help this creature. Just watch the group of men cheer as fresh blood soaked the hedgerows. That moment rewired something in me. Since then, I've spent my life pushing back against the cruelty of blood sports. Anything from badger baiting, stag coursing, and of course illegal fox hunting. Now I was behind the wheel of a rusted van rattling down narrow country lanes, the kind that twisted like veins through ancient woodland. GPS had given up 10 miles back. The trees grew taller here, ash, yew, and hazel, forming arches overhead that blocked out the late autumn sun. A strange quiet settled, the kind you only notice when you've lived too long in cities. In the back were the crew. Sophie sharp-tongued, fierce-eyed. She'd grown up in inner-city Wolverhampton, got into animal rights after her dog was poisoned by her neighbor. Once smashed a grouse estate's window with a brick wrapped in a wildlife trust leaflet. Nick was quiet, ex-army. His 1,000-yard stare never left him, but often here in the green, among the brambles and birdsong, he came closest to looking human again. This work, Sabotage Resistance, was his therapy. Tom was the youngest, barely 23. He came from a long line of country folk. His grandfather ran fox hunts in Yorkshire. Tom once helped flush out a vixen when he was 16 and had nightmares about it for years. He joined us out of guilt, maybe, or because he believed redemption was real. We rounded the bend and the village emerged. Harlow's Hollow. A pocket of time untouched by modernity. The houses were stone and ivory choked, roofs slanted and sagging with centuries of rain. There was no signal, no street lights and no traffic. Just a creeping mist and a church bell that rang at the wrong time. A hand-painted wooden sign read, "Welcome to Harlow's Hollow. Tread light, walk right." We slowed as we passed a crumbling war memorial and small schoolhouse with boarded windows. 2 boys played football barefoot in the mud beside it. They stopped as we passed and stared, silent, unsmiling. "Feels off," Sophie muttered. "It's like stepping into a 17th century painting that doesn't want you in it," said Tom. We parked beside the only pub in town, the Broken Heart, its sagging roofline leaning as if trying to collapse on itself. A pub sign swung in the wind, a red stag with its belly slashed open. Inside, the smell of beer, vinegar, and wet stone hit us first. James was barely seated at the far table by the fireless hearth. He looked like the land itself, deeply creased, sun-beaten, carved out of the earth and bad luck. He didn't rise when we entered, just raised a hand and gestured us over. "You're the saboteurs?" he asked in a low, gruff tone. "Yeah. You're James?" He nodded. "They're hunting again in a few days' time. But this time it ain't no fox they're after." We sat, ordered pints. The barmaid said nothing, eyes flicking to our boots, our gear. A man at the bar was carving something into the wood with a penknife. A fox? A man? It was hard to tell. Nobody smiled. Nobody spoke. Above the hearth hung a tattered watercolor painting. At first glance, a standard fox hunt. Riders, dogs, the blur of red coats. But when you looked closer, the figure being hunted didn't look vulpine though. More humanoid. Later, when the place emptied, James leaned in. The firelight caught the lines of his face. "They've taken children before," he said. always made it look like runaways, accidents, but I know what I saw." Sophie frowned. "Who's they?" "The Darrow family, and the Hollow Hunt. Lord Darrow and his inner circle, been doing it for centuries." He took a deep swig from his pint, shaking his head. "Folkses at least keep the rabbits from eating my cabbages. These bastards, they run hounds through my pastures, kill my sheep, piss on my fences like they own everything." Sophie slammed her glass down. "Why hasn't the village stopped them? How can you let these sick fucks get away with this?" James's eyes narrowed. "Because they're afraid. Because they remember." Then they told us the folktale, passed down in dark corners and unfinished verses. The word was once a man, or something like it, a keeper of balance between man and beast. When men pushed deeper into the wolds, clearing, killing, claiming, the forest struck back. Until the Darrows made a pact, gave the word a child, let him be raised wild, become part of the woods, and then hunt him. A ritual sacrifice, to show the forest man still had domain. Each successful hunt won them another generation of safety, harvests and control. He paused. "My son, 3 years ago, he was 6, vanished. They said he wandered off into the woods, but I found his coat, torn, just lying in the middle of the path." James took us up to his land, a mile outside of the village, past a rusted gate and into a hollow glade. There were signs here, subtle but mistakable. Stones stacked in spirals, bones tied with black twine, effigies nailed to trees, half man, half beast. "He's out there still," James said, pointing to the tree line. "They call him the Redling now. You can see him at the edge of the woods, just watching." We made camp in his converted tool shed, maps and photos on the walls, printouts and Polaroids pinned with nails, scribbled notations, bloodstains on an old Darrow crest. The air smelled of damp paper and cold steel. That night, by the crackle of a makeshift fire, we shared our stories again, deeper this time. I told them about the hare in Norfolk. Sophie told about the time she stopped a badger baiting ring somewhere in South Derbyshire, and had got glassed for it. Nick said nothing for a long time, then murmured, "Kandahar was easier than this place." Tom stared at the fire. "If they raised him wild, what does this mean? Does he still think like a person?" James answered, "You'll see, if he lets you." And just as we settled into the silence, I saw him. In the dark woods, small, pale, draped in a foxpelt, eyes glowing faint ember. He didn't blink, just watched. The morning broke not with the sun, but with a pale light pushing through a heavy veil of mist. Dew clung to the hedgerows of spindle and hawthorn like sweat on fevered skin, and the ash trees stood as grey silhouetted sentinels in mourning. There I stood at the edge of the kitchen garden, cradling a mug of black coffee, watching a pair of jackdaws peck at the remnants of seed scattered on the path. In the distance, an old woman moved through the fog towards the woodland. Others joined her quietly, emerging like ghosts on the moor, men and women placing small offerings at the wood's edge. A freshly shot wood pigeon, feathers still damp with blood, a brace of rabbits, a wedge of cheddar cheese, strawberries, and a wicker basket of pink lady apples. One man laid what appeared to be a wood carving of a fox, weather-worn but clearly treasured. At that moment I felt it, the land holding its breath. They're leaving offerings. It was James, having gotten up earlier to work on the farm before everyone else. For the Redling, no doubt. Why are they feeding him? Because some think he's still a boy, others think he's a god. And maybe they're both right, James answered. That afternoon, the group fanned out for recon. We took turns watching the hunting lodge in the beach hangover above the village. Hidden behind gorse and brambles, Sophie and I lay flat in the grass, binoculars on the sprawling estate. There, over several yards, we got the picture of what we were dealing with. Hunting lords and their sycophants, a string quartet playing Waltz of the Flowers, champagne flutes in one hand, riding crops in the other. A bonfire crackled on in the centre of the fete champêtre as servants wandered, offering hors d'oeuvres. The fact these people were enjoying themselves at this meet, likely anticipating the idea of a human child being torn to shreds for some twisted ritual, sickened me to my stomach. Then came the man of the hour himself, the devil in velvet hunting cloak, lifting his drink as the fire crackled. Lord Robert Darrow, a slender man in his 70s with silver hair, a thin hawk-line nose, and a haughty tone. The type you often see in some snobby elite club. "To the old ways," he cried. "To dominion. To the word that bends the wood and blood." The crowd cheered. Snippets of conversation followed. Coded. Careful. "He's ready now. Been seen by Standing Stones." "Another year, another offering."
"Same line, always the same methods."
Back at the farmhouse, Sophie paced furiously.
"This isn't hunting. It's a fucking cult. You really gonna go and sacrifice a child for some folkloric bullcrap?"
Nick was busy tinkering with one of his radios, while Tom was researching hacked documents. I was watching out the window. I swore the Redling was out there watching me in return. He knew we were talking about him. Sophie slammed her fists onto the table, her voice now crackling with frustration.
"Why hasn't the village done anything to stop this? How can you all let this happen? Your own child is going to die? And for what? Some folklorist bullshit."
James slowly looked up. "Because they think we're nothing." He rose, leading to the mantel. "To those bastards we're filth. Bumpkins. Can't tell a hedgehog from a hairbrush. That's what Darrow said to us once. And we believed it. Or at least we were scared enough to act like we did." Silence. "I know me son's out there," James said softly. "Michael probably doesn't remember who he is. Doesn't know who his father is. Just waiting for these brutes and those mangy mutts to tear him to pieces like fucking Christmas wrapping paper. And no one will do anything about it." James takes a deep breath. "That's why you lot are here. To help me put a stop to this madness. I don't give a crap at this point if I get killed. Or magical nature spirits get pissed at us for not giving it what it wants. This needs to end." Nick finally spoke up. "And don't call the police for help. Or even contact the neighbouring counties." James scoffed. "Yeah, brilliant, mate. Hello, police. I'd like to report a fox hunting cult kidnapping kids and sacrificing to a pagan god. Who's going to believe us?" James picked something plushy from the mantelpiece. A soft fox plush. A bit tattered from old age, but holding its endearing charm. "I don't care if I lose 1,000 lambs to foxes. I don't care if I lose the farm or get hung for treason by village. I just want my son back." He stared into the glassy eyes of the stuffed animal, and I swore I could see a stray tear. This bloody little thing. This was Michael's favourite toy. He called it Todd. Ironic, honestly. I hated foxes, yet he adored them. They were his favourite animal. The next day was full of a small unease. Shrines found along the tree line, bones and woven brambles, a trail camera Tom knocked over and snapped in half. "Those toffee-nosed bastards," Tom murmured in frustration. We discovered a hidden clearing behind a blackberry thicket, where villagers have formed a crude circle of dried flowers, candles, and charred wood in the center. Nick had a good idea what it meant. The following night, we watched the hunting lodge again. The party grew more rowdy. Music drifted over the fields, distorted by wind and fog. I caught Lord Darrow in my view once again, standing by the fire, now with a grotesque pelt of a victim of his fox hunts draped over his shoulders. He spoke again to his followers. "In 2 days will the child of beasts of prey run. Land will be reminded of who holds the whip, and once again, Mother Nature will kneel to her masters." We listened to the rhythm of the woodland as we sat on the porch, planning our move on the hunt. James joined with Todd, cradled in his arms like a newborn baby. "We need to act first." James sat directly. "This isn't just Michael or bloody foxes anymore, but many children to come before us." The autumn fog thickened like porridge, curling around the farmhouse like smoke. I couldn't sleep that night. I came to this village to help put an end to fox hunting, only to be dragged into a conspiracy. Once I finally succumbed to fatigue, I dreamt. I dreamt of running through the eaves and underbrush with roots like bare-knotted fists. Behind me, a pack of hellish dogs with red eyes and frothing maws snapping at my heels. Ahead, the Redling at the edge of the woods, staring at me with bright amber eyes, and whispered, "Would you plead to stop them?" I snapped out of my nightmare, only to see a fox staring out of my window. Once it noticed I was awake, the beast trotted back into the thickets. What does this all mean? The first sound was a bird, a male blackbird trilling from the hedgerows. His voice was brittle, glass bright against the dull hush of the early morning, soon joined by the squeals and grunts of James's neighbor's pigs, set loose among the acorn-rich underbrush. On he sat by the window, tea cooling in his hands. He hadn't slept much that night. None of us had. The night had been thick with half-seen shapes, the woods creaking like old bones. Somewhere past midnight, even the local barn owl had fallen silent. Then came the robin and its autumnal song. It perched on the windowsill, puffed red breast, bright as day, head cocked as though listening. James noticed it at first. "That's a sign," he muttered. "Old folks say robins carry messages from the dead, from the spirit world." The little bird let out a single note, sharp and strange, then flew off towards the edge of the trees.
"Well, I think Mr. Redbreast wants us to follow him,"
Sophie said, already grabbing her coat.
"I know when not to ignore a guide when one shows up."
No one questioned her. In Harlow's Hollow, too many things weren't coincidence. We followed the robin deep into the woods, fluttering to branch, sometimes waiting patiently for us to keep up, past the place where the offerings had been left the day before. Many are now gone or slowly decaying from the elements. As we tread, we could hear pheasants clattering through the underbrush. A hedgehog, perhaps returning home from a late night of hunting, waddled across our path. The stillness was shattered by a sudden rustle, and there he was, Michael, the Redling. The young boy half-shrouded in the morning mist near an ancient yew, a shape out of time. He wore the same fox pelt draped over his shoulders, matted with burrs and dried leaves. His eyes, human yet not, met mine without fear. Sophie stepped forward slowly, crouched low.
"Hey there, sweetheart. It's okay."
The boy's head tilted. Then, with an uncanny quickness, he dropped to all fours and bolted. But not away. He circled. Joining him out from the undergrowth were foxes, badgers, stoats, weasels, and even a polecat. Low and silent like a predator testing a herd, Nick whispered, "He's not just a kid anymore." "No," said James, voice raw. "He's been out in the woods for far too long. And those monsters made him into this." His knuckles whitened. "My son. That's my bloody boy." A stunned silence followed. The air grew colder. Rooks cawed overhead. The forest was listening. James stepped forward slowly, voice shaking like old timber. "Michael, son, that's me. Your father." The boy flinched. His eyes, feral, golden, blinked uncertainly. "Do you remember? Your name is Michael Corbin. You lived on a farm with me. You used to love reading Rupert Bear, playing football with your mates, and you loved foxes, even if I didn't. You have a little fox named Todd back home. You wouldn't sleep without him. He misses you." The Redling tilted his head. A breath caught in his throat, but he said nothing. "I looked for you," James whispered. "I never stopped. I'm sorry I let those horrible people take you." The Redling continued tilting its head at James. A rather protective sow badger snarled at the sheep farmer to keep away from the Redling. I couldn't believe what I saw. Michael calmed her with a quick cacker. "Incredible," Nick whispered. "Your son is a real-life Mowgli now." "Yeah. Bloody hell, son," James muttered. But before we could move closer, a crack rang through the air. A branch snapped somewhere nearby, a hiss of movement. Then came the smoke. Michael's animals scattered into the undergrowth. A veil of oily vapor moved closer. A track rang through the air. A branch snapped somewhere else nearby. And then the smoke came. Figures emerged from the smoke screen, tall, masked, and silent. The hunters. Their faces were hidden behind grotesque masks of bone and hide, like beasts born from nightmare. One held a long shepherd's crook, another a net. Michael shrieked. Then chaos. Sophie hurled a smoke flare, painting the world crimson. Nick tackled one of the men to the ground. "Got one!" Tom scrambled through the smoke, grabbing Michael's arm, but something yanked the boy back. A steel trap disguised under leaves clanged shut beside his feet. The hunters surged forward. James tried to run, shouting for his boy, but I grabbed him back by the collar, having seen through those hunters' games. "Don't! It's a trap!" Michael was dragged, kicking and howling, into his metal cage, sat in an old rusted trailer behind a covered quad bike. The hunters vanished into the smoke. their prize in tow. The cock robin returned. He flitted around James's head, then darted after the fleeing cage, its trilling call like a warning. Tom and Nick threw the bound cultist onto the kitchen floor. The man's mask now cracked. He was no rural villager. His accent was posh, his clothes too clean beneath the grime.
"You're not from here,"
Sophie growled.
"Well, aren't you a clever little chav?"
The man sneered.
"Doesn't matter. It's too late."
I stepped closer, now intrigued what this ruffian had to say. "So you can keep pretending you lot own the land?" The cultist smiled wider, clearly indulging our frustration.
"We don't pretend.
We remember the old ways,
Before your lot came with the cameras and flares. We know the power beneath the soil even better than those imbecilic locals."
"Then why hide behind your smoke screens?"
Tom snapped.
"What? You think you lot were the first to try and sabotage our rituals?"
The man hissed.
"We got to keep you fools on your toes."
After securing the snob in one of James's rooms for the night, and giving him something to eat, we're not heartless, we retired for the night. Tom, Nick, and Sophie, battered and exhausted, were the first to hit the sack, leaving me alone with poor James. Poor bloke. Having to reunite with his son, only to be stripped of him once again.
"They're really going to do it? The ritual? My son, the Hunt's legacy? But not this time. I don't care if the wild swallows my farmstead whole. I don't care if wolves magically appear from the other world. I'm getting my son back or I'll die trying."
From the woods came the sharp bark of a fox, and then silence. I jolted awake just past midnight, realizing I dozed off in my chair. The dying embers of the fireplace now smoldered. The wind had stopped. The cock robin sat perched on the back of my chair, watching me with its jet-black eyes. Then, from the woods, came a sound unlike any I'd heard before. A scream, half human, half animal. Michael, being changed, and soon the hunt will begin.